like everyone to imagine that you're sitting on your front porch, or a front porch if you don't have your own. It's a nice spring day in early May 1969, just before dawn. You've got your cup of coffee, and you're listening to the sounds of the returning migratory birds in their dawn chorus. How are y'all feeling?
Peaceful.
Relaxed.
Glad to hear it. So now let's all pretend that we're sitting on that same porch. It's another really beautiful day in early May. The migratory songbirds are just starting to return. But instead of 1969, it's now 2023. So we all have that cup of coffee. We're all still listening for those birds. And this is what we hear this time. Notice any differences?
There's less.
There's less.
Quieter.
Quieter. And in 50 years, if things continue, we may not even have a dawn chorus anymore. So my name is Griffin Bray. I'm a semi-professional naturalist at this point, and for the past couple years, I've been researching and presenting on songbird declines across North America. All of this research has led me to a very simple conclusion. North America's birds are in dire peril, and your backyard can help save them. So over the next 10 minutes, we're going to examine a little bit about these declines, one of the potential reasons for them, and things that we can all do to help. So make sure you're comfortable for those next couple minutes, and we'll get started. Now, when you talk about declines in anything, of course people want to know, how bad is it? If we're losing, a handful of birds a year, it's technically a decline, but we don't really care too much. That's just a bad storm somewhere. However, over the past 50 years, nearly 1 in 3 birds has disappeared from our farm fields, our grasslands, our forests, and our neighborhoods. So, putting this into numbers, that's about 2.9 billion with a B birds since 1969. This research was published in 2019, and at that point, it made huge news everywhere. I've not really heard about it since then. We kind of moved on to the next thing. I think COVID probably helped with that. But I'd like to bring that back up because that 1 in 3 birds has actually been pretty significant. So, show of hands, how many people here are birders? You got binoculars, but you're not a birder? All right. Show of hands, how many people feed birds at their houses? Show of hands, how many people like looking at birds? All right. Now, if you do like looking at birds, some of these are probably going to be familiar to you. So, anyone seen a bird like this before? Yes, do you know what it's called?
Isn't it goldfish?
It does kind of look like a goldfinch. It's that bright color and it's got that dark. It's a little bit bigger than a goldfinch. Yeah?
Baltimore Oriole?
Yes, this is a Baltimore Oriole. It's a fairly common bird, especially at our feeders. Since 1969, we've lost 1 out of 3 Baltimore Orioles. How about this one? You guys can just say the name if you know it.
Blue jay.
Yeah, blue jays. We see a ton of these, right? 1 in 4, gone since 1969. How about these beauties?
Red-headed woodpecker?
Yeah, this is a red-headed woodpecker. This is actually a state species of concern in Wisconsin, partly because we've lost 50% of our red-headed woodpeckers in those 50 years. Now, if you're a birder where I'm from, this is one of the holy grails of winter migration. Anyone know what this one is?
Evening grosbeak?
This is an evening grosbeak. These are very beautiful finches that we get from up north. And if you get to see one now, you're really lucky because 9 out of 10 evening grosbeaks have disappeared in 50 years. So these declines are pretty steep, as evidenced by all the litter on the floor now. And of course, it's very hard to pinpoint one exact issue that has led to these declines. However, one of the biggest sources that we've found has to do with the availability of food. And it may not be the food that you're thinking of. Now, bless you.
Thank you.
You all are college students in the College of Natural Resources, right? How many of you have had to read the Sand County Almanac for class? Now, there's a chapter in the Sand County Almanac where all of Leopold talks about a couple of spiritual dangers. Notably, that it's a spiritual danger to suppose that your breakfast comes from a grocery store. I propose that there's no less a spiritual danger in supposing that bird food comes from a bird feeder. Because the majority of birds don't eat seeds for their entire life. They may supplement their diet with those. But really, in the bird world, insects are the bread, butter, and baby formula that help keep birds alive and ensure their continued survival. To examine that a little bit more, I brought some friends with me. I did Lysol these all before I came here, so they are clean. Some of them make noise, some of them don't. But everyone is going to be getting one of these birds, and we're going to do a little activity with these. That one makes noise very easily.
Oh,
Supposed to.
you got waxwing.
Okay.
Nice touch.
That's a good one.
Sam?
Yeah.
Perfect. So, everyone has a bird. They all look different, right? These are fairly representative of the diversity that we have in Wisconsin. Now, about 96% of birds depend on insects to feed their babies. So, I would like everyone to raise their bird if they think that it feeds its young insects. All right, raise your hand up really high if you think. Okay, so only one bird in this room doesn't feed its young insects. That one. Every other bird, even the tiny hummingbird, depends on insects to feed its young. In fact, to give an example of how important this is, whoever has the black-capped chickadee, can you raise that? Attention drawn.
Sorry.
A single clutch of black-capped chickadee young will need 6,000 to 9,000 caterpillars over the 14 days that it spends in the nest. That's not including all of the time that the mom and dad have to feed the teenage bird when it keeps coming back after it leaves. So, having a lot of insects, what scientists call essential insect biomass, is critical to ensuring that we get these species in the future. Because really, who doesn't want to see more hummingbirds? Now, if we're talking about insects and encouraging insects in areas, what are some of the things that we can do to ensure that birds like that chickadee, or that swallow, or that oriole have the food that they need, have those insects? What kind of things can we do? Yes?
Plant native wildflowers.
We could plant native wildflowers. What else?
Not using pesticides.
We could not use insecticides. I'm sure all of you are thinking other things that you don't want to share out. But yeah, there's a whole ton of things we could do. And my favorite is planting native plants. Because by reintroducing native plants and native diversity into our yards and living areas, we can help support these birds. As a quick example, I brought some fun things. Here we have some leaves that looked better a couple days ago. I got these on campus. I have some other leaves that I also got on campus that also looked better a couple days ago. But if you look at these two different sets of leaves, does anyone notice any differences? Other than the obvious ones in oak and ones in maple. Yes,
One's been eaten on?
one's been eaten on, which one?
The oak?
The oak. So, can you elaborate on that a little bit more? Like, how much has been eaten?
It's hard to say, but it looks like quite a few of the leaves have been chewed on, at
Yeah.
least.
Quite a few of the leaves have been chewed on. And on this one, how many bug bites did anyone see on it?
Little,
And-
maybe none.
Huh?
Like none.
Yeah, there's
Maybe
one
one
tiny
tiny.
one that I just now noticed. But yeah, these leaves are almost pristine, which is partly why we like planting them. However, on a native tree like this bur oak, you can get up to 500 different species of caterpillars alone, that eat the leaves of this. On a Norway maple, you get 2. On a tree like a ginkgo, so having those native plants, whether it's an oak, the wildflowers in your yard, or any of those other good native species, pretty much gives you a living bird feeder that will help to support that community long after you're gone. And you don't need a huge property either. I have friends back in Michigan who have a small suburban lot. They've planted native plants, and they've seen massive increases in the amount of birds that have come. There's also been research that shows yards with more native plants have an increase in native birds, including rare ones, and also butterflies, because who doesn't like butterflies? So, even though our birds are disappearing at unprecedented rates, there are very simple actions that we can take, like putting more native plants in our yard, that will help ensure their survival for future generations, and make sure that we can enjoy that chorus for decades to come. Thank you. If you have questions, I'll see you right after class.